fascination with the Temple of Aindara is especially strong. That's mostly because of the huge human foot imprints that appear at the entrance to the temple.
Hello, I'm back again, and I'm going to review a video that covers strange, mysterious places that scientists can't explain. You know, does anybody know what scene this movie comes from? I have no idea. It looks like bad CGI, and I know it's not Planet of the Apes. I just don't know where it's from. If you know, send a comment. Referring to all two of you, I know 3 of us here. We're here like 300. We're fighting a good fight. I appreciate your 2 dedicated listeners that I have. Thank you so much. Or watchers. Thank you. Anyway, without further ado,
When it comes to life on Earth and human history, scientists and historians have some.
okay, that looks like Scarlett Johansson. I still don't know what movie that is. Scarlett Johansson, the Black Widow from the Avengers. Anyway,
Some of the answers, but not all of them. They're great at their job, and they can reach grand conclusions based on tiny clues and pieces of evidence.
you see the windmills over there? I'm sorry to interrupt again. If anybody ever rode through an area with a lot of windmills, especially at night, you notice how they blink? The ones I see, they blink red lights. But they're shorter than these. Anyway.
But sometimes they encounter something that leaves them totally stumped. That's what today's video is all about. These are the strange and wonderful places all over the world that are amazing to see, but impossible to understand, even for scientists. Why have one tree when you can have 2? That seems to be the theory in Casorzo, Italy, where there's a remarkable sight to behold in a field. It's 2 trees in one, and they're completely different species of tree. The bottom one is a mulberry tree, but it has a cherry tree growing on top of it. It's a sort of hybrid duplex of the kind that very rarely occurs in nature. While smaller trees do occasionally grow on top of larger ones, it's very unusual to see 2 fully grown trees cohabiting and thriving like this. Usually, one of the tree's good health will come at the expense of the other, and it's usually the tree on top that suffers. As the beautiful white flowers on the cherry tree demonstrate, that isn't the case here.
This is pretty weird. Yeah, I see why they have no explanation. It's like completely 2 different trees. It's almost like you have a identical twin and the egg doesn't completely separate and they look completely different from you. That's like, or the Siamese twins, right? And they just look completely different. That's what it looks like here. Which is, yeah, that's mind-baffling. That's pretty mind-baffling. It's almost like, when was this planted? Was this something recent, or has it been there for centuries or decades or however long? That's really strange.
Unsurprised.
I meant to say, it looks like, yeah, the one tree is kind of feeding from the other tree, or they feed each other. I don't know.
Surprisingly, the strange tree has become a tourist attraction for the area.
The tree hugger.
Although it's had to be fenced off for its own protection so that people don't get too close. Climbing it is illegal. Mystery surrounds the origins of the Hidenter in Austria. It's believed to have been built during the reign of the Roman Emperor Constantius II, who ruled between the years of 351 and 361, but that's little more than a best guess. The ancient Romans sometimes built structures like this to mark the site of significant military victories. That would make a degree of sense, because the ancient city of Carnuntum once existed in this spot and played host to around 50,000 people surrounded by a walled fortress. The settlement is long gone.
It kind of looks like one of those places where they had gladiators meet up for different types of battles. Kind of like if you watch the Spartacus series or the movie Gladiator.
But the one remaining arch of this building remains. For several centuries, it was misunderstood as the gateway to the old city. As so little of its true history is known, plenty of myths and legends have grown up around the Hidenter. It's become a popular gathering spot for pagans who refer to it as Heaven's Gate for reasons unknown. If it really was...
Seems like there's a cult for everything. Everything has a cult. It's really weird.
As a Roman tetrapylon, it would probably have a statue of either an emperor or a god in the middle of it. But there's no sign of it today. There's a clue in the name of Envatinit Island in Kenya that tells you a lot about how the Kenyans feel about it. The name of the strange-looking island, which is on Lake Turkana, translates as no return. That ties in with the myths and legends that surround the place, which suggest that nobody who enters it will ever return. In 1935, English explorer Vivian Fush decided to test that theory by visiting it with colleagues Bill Dayson and Martin Shelfels on a research mission. But when they failed to return, it only served to reinforce the legends.
Now, see, that's the thing. It's almost like some of these explorers that go to these places and don't return, they don't listen to the local people. The local people don't just make up things and pass them down from one generation to the next as lies. I mean, I would always listen to the locals in regards to things like this and do's and don'ts. I mean, what makes you the exception? You just go into a place that says place of no return. Like, I'm not gonna bet on that. Regardless, I might, hey, we could send a drone in there. If the drone doesn't return, maybe we can at least get some footage of why, or even like a robot or a drone, something with no life. I guess the same way they send different probes on the moon. Yeah, you can send a drone or a probe in there, or one of those robots, and just video, maybe find out why people are not returning.
While some conspiracy theorists claim that the island contains an alien base full of extraterrestrial beings who will abduct anybody who gets too close, the Kenyan belief is that those who descend into the enormous crater at the island's center will be struck by lightning and obliterated. Photographs taken by planes that
maybe it's a combination of both, or somewhere in between.
have flown over the crater show what appear to be the remains of ancient huts at its center, but nobody's...
That looks really cool. Those huts look really cool. 1 second. They look like... I tried to rewind.
And obliterated. Photographs taken by planes that have flown over the crater show what appear to be the remains of...
They look really cool. I don't know if they look petrified or it's something else. Hey, maybe that's why people don't return. Maybe those who live there are like, don't bother us. Who knows?
Ancient huts at its center, but nobody's been brave enough to go and inspect it with their own eyes for a very long time.
Of course.
Perhaps that's for the best. There are many ancient and wonderful temples in Syria, most of which have their own fascinating story to tell, but the fascination with the Temple of Ain Dara is especially strong. That's mostly because of the huge human foot imprints that appear at the entrance to the temple. They've been there for at least as long as the temple has.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I wonder if that's what they call it, the giants from the Old Testament, or it's giant human footprint. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 toes. So 10 toes. It looks like 10 toes. I don't know. Based on the print, that's a big person or a thing. I'm not gonna assume it's human, but it looks like a humanoid footprint,
which is at least 3,300 years. And there's disagreement about how they got there. Scientists and archaeologists say that they were carved by the same people who built the temple and are intended to represent the procession of the gods into the temple's inner chambers.
I mean, I could see that too, right? Maybe they carved a stone foot, maybe. I don't know. Or, again, could be a big person for all we know.
But many local legends say that the temple itself was visited by a great god with clawed feet who left the imprints himself.
Okay, I know this is gods of Egypt. Why did they put gods of Egypt in there? I tried to watch this. I couldn't finish it. Anyway,
Yet another school of thought
I was referring to Gods of Egypt. I tried to watch and couldn't finish. Not this video.
says that the people who built the temple were giants and they left the footprints behind. There are many tales of giant humans living in
Hey, it confirms what we were guessing earlier. Could be a possibility.
this part of the world during ancient times, and the footprints are the first thing that the people who believe these stories point to as evidence. Sadly, the temple was badly damaged after being hit by a Turkish air raid in 2018, but the footprints survived. Most people who visit Egypt also visit the Great Pyramid of Giza, which is a
I like how they have the modern city behind the pyramids. That's a really cool look. It's like is that Cairo? It's like a modern city, like right behind all those ancient pyramids and the Sphinx structure there. That's really cool scenery.
spectacular sight to see. But if a few more of them could be persuaded to drive a further 20 minutes to Abu Ghraib, it wouldn't be such a little-known secret. The old city contains a structure that is, or at least was, a sun temple, and was dedicated to the great god Ra. It was built somewhere around 2,400 years ago and used to have a stepped pyramid of its own. From ancient Egyptian historical records, we know that there were once 6 sun temples at Abu Ghraib, but only 2 remain today. They're ruins today, as the colossal stone obelisk that once marked the westernmost point of Abu Ghraib, the massive red granite blocks that are scattered across the area, are a puzzle for archaeologists. They appear to have been precision engineered with polished surfaces and holes so smooth that they must surely have been made using advanced drilling technology. As if that weren't mysterious enough, there are also several square alabaster dishes that contain markings akin to the gears of an engine.
You know, you never know. People always assume that human beings before us didn't have advanced technology or advancements. And then when you look at places like Egypt, people find evidence of batteries or engine designs or things like that. I mean, maybe they found a way to make things run with their version of technology. We don't know that. A lot of stuff, to me, is very well, I want to say, well, I guess researched or well, I can't find the word. But anyway, it's like they put a lot of work into it. I'm no archaeologist. I know people put a lot of work into things, but just because you put a lot of work into something doesn't mean it's going to be 100% true. They're always finding new evidence of something else all the time, right? I mean, you can appreciate the work and still appreciate the fact that they may not be 100% correct in their guesstimates.
Did the people who lived here have access to advanced technology? If so, what happened to it? And to them?
Yeah, as we said earlier, hey, they could have had advanced technology. We just don't know what happened.
Once upon a time, Barsak Elmas was an island in the Aral Sea. These days, the water level is a little lower than it was in ancient times, and it's now a plateau in Kizlorda, Kazakhstan. Much like Avitenet Island in Kenya, this is said to be a place that people visit and never return from.
Another place of no return. Let me guess. Somebody tried to explore it and they didn't return. Let's find out.
Even the name, which translated from its original Turkic language, means whoever comes here shall not return. In 1939, it was declared a national reserve.
I was almost going to say in 1939 somebody tried to explore and they didn't return. Anyway, let's find out.
And was closed off to visitors for the remainder of the 20th century. Nobody knows what the Soviets did there during those years, but there are plenty of rumors that it was used for top-secret research. Even today, electronic devices fail as you get close, and
Top-secret research, I'm sure.
navigational equipment stops working. There have been documented cases of people's skin turning blue after spending too long at or close to the plateau, and
Now that is odd and scary. Like, why did it turn blue? Has anybody taken any samples? I hate when you get these mysteries or these unsolved things and nobody takes samples. I guess you don't think to do that. You don't have time, or you don't. Again, the opportunity doesn't present itself. I'm not saying these things don't happen, because they probably do. It's just funny how that when these things happen, it's, of course, it's never someone's first thought to try to video or get a sample, right? Because they're so preoccupied with what's happening. But it would be nice to like catch something while it's happening, or like a recording or a sample or something like that.
Commonly told legend about a group of nomads who stayed here for what they believed to be a year, only to return to civilization to find that 3 decades had passed.
So it's like, from what he just said, it's like some sort of time capsule where time moves slowly for the person residing there and moves faster for everyone else. Like a large, again, they're in like a large time capsule. That sounds pretty cool, in a way. I mean, not that I'd want to, go somewhere and then all your friends and family have aged 3 decades. I know that'd be weird. So many movies about that. It's like you've already gone into hyperspace somehow and come back, and people have aged out. Yeah, that's pretty odd.
It's a mysterious and seemingly supernatural place. Amid the ruins of Amman in Jordan, where you'll find the crumbling shells of temples and palaces, you'll also find the shattered remnants of a giant human hand made from stone. This is the Hand of Hercules, and even in its broken, 3-fingered state, it's still a strangely
That camera was pretty wobbly. Messed with my eyes a little bit. Anyway.
Intimidating thing to look at. The hand is part of the Temple of Hercules, which was built during the 2nd century during the Roman occupation of Amman's citadel. For reasons that have been lost to history, it appears that the temple was never finished. The presence of an elbow made from marble implies that there was once a plan to build a colossal statue of Hercules here, which, had it been completed, would likely have been the largest statue in the world at that time. The region is known for earthquakes, so it's possible that the Romans gave up on the idea of building anything here after enduring one earthquake too many for their liking.
I'm sure. I mean, if every time you try to build something, the ground shakes and it breaks, yeah, I would be discouraged myself.
As tour guides like to point out to the curious visitors, the nails and cuticles on the hand look like they're well trimmed and conditioned, leading to jokes about Hercules enjoying regular manicures.
That's funny. That's funny.
While we at least know that the Romans were responsible for building the abandoned Temple of Hercules, we have no idea whatsoever who built the pyramid of Siocilco in Mexico City, Mexico. There's some evidence that an enormous volcanic eruption destroyed the civilization that once existed here, but aside from that, they left very little behind for us to remember them by, other than their pyramid. By examining the land around the pyramid, archaeologists have been able to conclude that it was farmed for a period that started around 3,200 years ago and ended during the 1st century when the Citle volcano erupted. That was a tragic twist of irony for the Mesoamerican population, who are thought to have worshipped a god of fire. While some historians believe that the entire population perished in that disaster, there are some who believe that the survivors fled to other parts of Mexico and took elements of their culture with them, eventually playing a role in the rise of Teotihuacan. While there are no humans living here anymore, there's a thriving population of rattlesnakes and tarantulas, making it a somewhat hazardous place to visit.
I can imagine. I mean, as interesting as that sounds to visit, I can't imagine going and somebody telling me, oh, it's infested with rattlesnakes and tarantulas. That would be a no. Again, send a drone or a robot to snap pictures and video and call it a day.
The mystery of the lost city of the Kalahari is an existential one, by which we mean that there's controversy about the question of whether it really exists at all. The story begins in 1885, when the Canadian magician and explorer William Leonard Hunt, also known as the Great Farini, claimed to have found an empty city of ancient ruins while crossing the Kalahari Desert on foot. In his report to the Royal Geographic Society, he spoke of seeing half-buried ruins, shattered temples, burial grounds, and
Don't mind me doing my
semi-collapsed
dance
walls.
here.
That prompted no less than 25 expeditions in the decades that followed, none of which found anything like what the great Farini described. By 1964, a new idea had arisen. A.J. Clement theorized that the magician had been mistaken about the route he took through the desert and devised an alternative route that Hunt may have taken by accident. By following it, he found a series of colossal stone monoliths made of dolerite, a material that, as it erodes, can begin to resemble straight, square blocks that resemble walls. Clement concluded that what Hunt actually saw was nothing more than a natural rock formation dating back 180 million years. But his explanation didn't satisfy everybody. There are still people searching for the lost city of the Kalahari to this day. The Nazis built...
I got nothing for that. All I got was, as the rocks erode, they tend to look like walls, and nobody's found the city. Well, at least people have returned.
built a lot of strange structures all over Europe over the course of the Second World War, and not all of them are understood. In the absence of solid information, many wild and wondrous theories have sprung up, such as those that surround the concrete rings they built on the coast of the Barents Sea. The fact that the Soviet military took ownership of them after the war and refused to let anyone else get close for several decades did little to dispel the most extreme of those theories. To some, the Soviet interest in the site confirmed that these were places that the Germans conducted tests on anti-gravity devices and weapons of mass destruction.
If this was so many years ago, this was almost, I want to say, okay, when was this World War II? It was 1940s. So this could have a roughly 80 something years ago. Oh wow, it's almost coming up on a century. Why has almost a century passed and there's no a use for us for this anti-gravity technology, right? After 80 years, nobody, like, they just swept this under the rug. We could have used that, you know? I know there are crazy people that probably would have, let me not go there. But hey, what if I want to just float to work or float to school, right? Maybe I don't want to ride a bumpy ride on the road. Maybe there's some other things that could be utilized with that anti-gravity technology. Anyway, just rambling thoughts.
There's been some speculation that this is the place that the Nazis worked on a top-secret project known as Die Glocke, or the Bell. Other than knowing its shape, nobody truly knows what Die Glocke was supposed to do, aside from the fact that it was a fearsomely powerful weapon. It's perhaps more likely...
That name sounds like a powerful weapon. What did he say, Die Glocke? That sounds like something that would just obliterate you. The word sounds like obliteration.
that these were concrete bases upon which rotating artillery pieces were mounted. But that's far less fun to believe. There are people who live in the town of Swinton in North Yorkshire, England, who believe that there's an ancient temple in their neighborhood. Looking at Swinton Druid's Temple, it's not hard to understand why. It certainly has the appearance of something ancient.
Yeah, that does look ancient, and it looks kind of unpleasant. Like, I don't know, unpleasant to visit, just in general.
And the words Druid Temple ought to give a clue to its function.
You're right.
In reality, however, it was built a mere 2 centuries ago by an extremely eccentric landowner, William Danby, who lived in Swinton during the 1820s, was a wealthy and generous man who was concerned about rising unemployment in his hometown. To help solve the problem, he paid dozens of locals to build the temple for him as an effigy to Stonehenge.
Hey, you know you're expecting something related to the unknown, and then you get this rich guy who wanted to replicate something ancient. Like, I don't know. I'm sure there could be a conspiracy formed behind that somehow, but it's funny. It's like a rich guy who wanted to pay tribute to something ancient, so he built it on his yard because he also wanted to employ people at the same time. Well, I mean, which is good. It's just, It's just I don't know what to say. It's just anticlimactic.
Once that was done, he offered a huge financial reward to anyone capable of living as a hermit in the middle of it for 7 years.
Oh, this gets more interesting. Okay.
Someone managed to stay for 4.5 years,
I wasn't expecting that.
but nobody managed all 7, and William's reward was never claimed. Even though it's not really an ancient temple, it's still visited by New Age pagans and druids every summer solstice.
Not surprised. Not surprised.
Gunjiwamp in Groton, Connecticut, USA is the type of place that gives archaeologists and historians a headache.
I can't wait to hear this because this just looks like someplace in New England. Okay.
The settlement has been used and reused by a variety of settlers for at least 1,400 years, all of whom left their own mark on the landscape. There are stone chambers, stone rings, etching on the walls that don't correspond to any known language, and Native American artifacts. There are so many traces of human occupation in Gunjiwamp, it's impossible to say where one era of its use ended and the other began, or even who was the first there.
Oh, I was thinking about the place with all the new housing that was there. I didn't know there were like some stone structures here.
One popular theory is that it was built in the 6th century by Celtic Christian monks who'd run away from Ireland to escape Viking raids. But that would rewrite the accepted history of pre-Columbian America and also disregards several pieces of evidence that suggest the site is far older.
Well, there's rewrites happening all the time today, so who knows?
Occasional spikes in electromagnetic activity have been detected
Here we go.
at Gunjiwamp, which scientists put down to the composition of magnetite, granite, and quartz rocks. But conspiracy theorists,
Of course, here comes the aliens.
buy into the idea that it's either an alien base or an energy vortex.
It could be. You never know. Hey, we should keep our minds open to this, right? You shouldn't close your mind to things because it makes you blind to what really could be, something huge right under your nose. Let's not be too arrogant to think that, these things aren't possible or we're the only sentient beings here.
One lithic stone tool found buried here is at least 3,500 years old, which blows a hole in the Celtic monk theory. We don't know whether it was built in stages or all at once, and frustratingly, we probably never will.
So that ends my review of these mysterious places. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thank you so much for listening. And please, please, please like and subscribe. Again, shout out to my 2 return listeners and watchers. Thank you guys. Thank you. We're really pushing through like the 300. Anyway, take care and thank you for your time.